Welcome everyone. It looks like we have a few people who have logged on early. We're going to give them just 1 minute to join the call and we will get started. All right, welcome everyone. My name is Erica Grau, Director of Marketing here at Rhinogram. Thank you for joining us today as Rhinogram, Focus Ortho, and Dr. Tina Reed of Tina Reed Orthodontics presents Focus on Orthodontic Virtual Care, Powerful Communication with Your Patients and Team. Just a few housekeeping items before we get started. We will send out the recording of this live presentation out via email. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, please do ask them in the GoToWebinar control panel. We've saved time at the end to answer any questions, and we'll be sure to follow up via email or phone call with any questions we don't get to. All right, Charlie, I'm going to hand it over to you and introduce our fabulous speaker today.
Well, hi, Erica. Thanks.
Hi.
Thanks for getting us all here. I'm Charlie Dunham, and I'm product manager at Focus Ortho. I really want to thank everyone for being here today, and I want to go ahead and introduce our presenter. I'm joined by Dr. Tina Reed of Tina Reed Orthodontics. Dr. Reed earned her undergraduate and dental degrees from the University of Pittsburgh. Prior to becoming a Pittsburgh orthodontist, she went on to complete a 3-year advanced orthodontic residency and Masters of Science in Oral Biology at the University of California, San Francisco. Her master's thesis, while at UCSF, was part of a long-term clinical study on the effect of female reproductive hormones on TMJ disease. All right, Dr. Reed, let's get started by telling us a little about your practice and how things are going.
Okay, thanks, Charlie. Thanks, Erica. Thanks for inviting me to share my experience with Focus and Rhinogram today. So yeah, I've been practicing orthodontics for a little over 20 years. As Charlie said, I did my residency at UC San Francisco, and then I stayed in the Bay Area for a couple of years and practiced at a private office. In 2003, I returned to my hometown of Pittsburgh, and for about 10 years, I worked in a very large group pediatric dental office. So there were 4 different locations. I was the only orthodontist working at all 4. I saw about 70 to 80 patients a day there, so I learned a lot. It was very busy. And so then in 2013, I decided to go off on my own. So I started a practice that's sort of nestled in a neighborhood within the city of Pittsburgh, and in a second practice that's in the northern suburbs of Pittsburgh. The one in the city is right between Carnegie Mellon and the University of Pittsburgh. So between the city office and the suburb office, I see a wide array of different patients. I knew from my experience with the pedo practice that for me personally, I wanted something a little smaller, a little more manageable. So I see patients about 3 days a week. I have a smaller team. Some of my team members have been with me since I moved back to Pittsburgh in my pediatric practice days. So I like to say that when I walk into my office, it sort of feels like family.
Nice. So for healthcare providers everywhere, COVID-19 has brought on new challenges. For professionals in the oral health space, we saw practices close their door and new PPE guidelines that orthodontists and patients have never seen before. Dr. Reed, can you tell us how 2020 completely flipped your practice upside down this year?
Yeah, so, like everyone at the beginning of 2020, you were hearing about the coronavirus and COVID-19. Then I had a very interesting experience at the very end of February. I have an adult Invisalign patient who also happens to be an epidemiologist with our county health department. And after her appointment, she pulled me aside and said, "Hey, can I talk to you about something?" Which sometimes at the end of the day, that's not always the greatest thing, but you never know. So at any rate, she said, "Hey, look, I just wanted you to know this COVID-19, this is serious and it's coming soon, and you need to be prepared." And I didn't quite know what to do with that information, but sure enough, 2 weeks later, we were closed. That was mid-March, and we remained closed until right after Memorial Day in May. During the closure, as a team, we tried to do a lot, as much as we could. So first thing was a few people took laptops from the office home with them. And we, since we're cloud-based, we were able to forward all of the calls to this whoever had the computer that day, and we could field phone calls if we needed to. Not that we were getting many phone calls when we were closed, but I just wanted, for a few hours each day, in the event that someone would call the office, I wanted them to get a human on the other line. And then they had access, the staff member had access to the schedule, which was really nice. Because of that, each day they could go through the schedule and make sure they reached out to everyone to make sure that they knew that we were no longer operating. The other thing we tried to do was continue care for our Invisalign patients and some of our clear aligner folks. So again, we would take each day, go through, see the patients that were coming in for their aligners. At that time, we were attempting to use virtual care through Invisalign. So the patient would be asked to take some photos, a little video of their teeth and bite. And then based on that, if it looked like they could move ahead, I would go to the office and mail some additional aligners out to them. Again, just to get at least those patients moving forward. We also wanted to keep our social media presence up and running. So we would occasionally, as a team, we would take pictures from our homes, pictures with our kids and our pets, and post them on social media, just so that our patients and their families knew that we were thinking about them. And then every week, maybe sometimes twice a week, the team would chat. We would just use FaceTime and just talk. First couple of weeks, that was about recipes and what we were binging on Netflix. And then as we moved on, we started to slowly lay out our plans for reopening. And those plans sort of, there were three main things that we were concerned about. One, we needed to order our PPE. Where were we going to get it from? How much did we need? Two, we had to think about our physical space. What were we going to do with the office? What chairs were we not going to use? What sort of bigger pieces of equipment like air purification systems were we going to bring in? And then the other thing was, of course, the schedule. We knew based on what the CDC was saying and what the American Dental Association was telling us that we had to reduce the number of patients in the office. We obviously had to social distance the patients, and they were also asking that just the patient come into the office. So that was the point where I started to search for some sort of a communication platform so that I could start to control the flow of the patients coming into and out of the office. And that's when I reached out to Rhinogram.
Awesome. So if I remember correctly, I think the ability to implement a virtual waiting room is what first brought you to Rhinogram. So for those who may not be familiar on the call, why don't you explain how you've set that up in your office?
Okay, so going back to the very beginning, when we opened, we sent out email blasts and through social media, a little video snippet of what this virtual waiting room and what this two-way texting system was all about. So patients that were scheduled for that particular day would receive a Rhino blast saying, "Hey, we've got this new system. You can now text us. And so when you arrive, please text the office, right? Text us back at this number, and then we'll let you know if it's okay if we have your chair ready and waiting when you arrive. We want to make sure everything is clean and sanitized before they come up. And if you're comfortable with it, we prefer that the patient come up to the office by themselves." Patients did that. They would arrive, text us. If we were ready, they would come up. Mostly all of my younger patients do come in alone. The parents seem to be more than fine with that. And then what evolved from that, which was really nice, is I could then finish the appointment and very easily use that text string to tell the waiting parent not only that we were finished and, hey, is it okay to send your son or daughter back to the car, but this is what we did today. This is how things are going. Maybe we talk about hygiene or elastic cooperation. And then I say, hey, I'm going to pass you off to Stephanie, and she's going to get you scheduled with the next visit. So what was a virtual waiting room, which is what we really needed, also turned into just a better form of communication with the parents.
Nice. So tell us, what else was on your shopping list? You said you were shopping for communication platform during your shutdown period. What else was like a must-have on that list?
Okay, so definitely two-way texting so we could control that flow. So the virtual waiting room. Appointment reminders. So I have always sent appointment reminders through email and voicemail. For me, what I found to work was 1 week, 3-day, and 3-hour intervals. But I started to notice that that wasn't as effective as being able to send a text reminder. So appointment reminders through texting, I thought was going to be far better than an email, which is much better than a voicemail message. And then for me, just having this communication platform integrate with my practice management software was going to be sort of a game changer.
Nice. And so now I'm sure everyone is dying to know, what has been the response from your patients now that you're textable?
Yeah, overwhelmingly positive. I think the patients knew from the beginning when we reopened that we had a plan for everything, and they felt very safe. Coming in and out of the office, they knew we were taking care of them as best as we could to keep everyone safe. And they love the fact that there is this really easy way to communicate with us on all sorts of different levels.
Wow. It sounds like a lot was kind of going on. Did you have any issues getting the team to buy into the new software and all these new changes as you did them?
Yeah. Oh, at first, yes. So like any new system, when you bring it into the office, there was a little bit of hemming and hawing. I think everyone was a little bit nervous when we reopened, of course. In order to get buy-in, I had to promise the team that what we would use would be user-friendly. So it had to be simple. Again, I told them that it would integrate with the practice management software with Focus. So there would be no data entry. And I promised that we would have some virtual training sessions before they launched into it. And we had all of that. Our virtual training sessions were fantastic. And what I can say is afterwards, the staff just sort of launched into all of the things that we could use Rhinogram for, and not just that virtual waiting room. So all of a sudden they were thinking of how we could free up time and how our workflow throughout the day could change for the better.
And so it sounds like you had a lot of new safety precautions and everything else that was going on, and you had to communicate that. So you were thinking about all the ways that Rhinogram could work. Were you able to use pieces of Focus and pieces of Rhinogram? How'd you do all of that communication with your patients?
Right. So it's easy to, I felt like short snippets of video content were to explain to people what we were doing when we were reopening to make everyone safe, were the most effective. And we could send those through both platforms to all of our patients. So everything from PPE, air purification units. I bought high-speed evacuation units with UV light, our new scheduling protocol, why we were doing it. We were talking about online COVID questionnaires and the fact that we were going to take everyone's temperature. All of these things that we were doing to keep people safe, we put out there through email blasts and Focus, and a Rhino blast each day for the patients coming in. So video snippets explaining everything over and over and over again. And then of course, all of that was on our social media pages as well.
Nice. So as many of the practices on this call can probably relate, one of the biggest challenges orthodontists are facing, and this year especially, is the high number of no-shows and cancellations. Without this knowledge of what you're doing to keep them safe, like Dr. Reed is talking about, patients are just scared to go into their doctor's office during this time. So Dr. Reed, you mentioned earlier about kind of like your reminder schedule and how you get patients in the door on time and on track. Tell us more about that strategy.
Yeah, so again, I know that what works for us was that interval of 1 week, 3 days, and 3 hours before an appointment, getting a reminder. What wasn't working over the last couple of years was voicemail and email reminders. People would often come in and say, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, I missed that appointment. I never got the message. Well, we knew we sent it, but the problem was people are not checking their inbox, or if they are, they're not opening emails, and they're definitely not checking voicemail messages on a regular basis. But you read a text. Everyone reads their texts, and it's just easy. The other thing that two-way texting did for our schedule is it allows the people who may have to do a last-minute cancellation or reschedule. It allows them to get in touch with us quickly, and then what we can do is get them rescheduled quickly, so things aren't falling through the cracks. So let's say before they would leave a voicemail message, we would then call them back, leave another voicemail message, and it was just many days before we might be able to get them back into the schedule. Now it's a text in the morning, hey, I might not be able to make my appointment later on this afternoon. My office manager will text that person back and say, all right, well, I have an opening next week. That's great. So that person's taken care of. But then you have this void in your schedule. And now that's much more easily filled because we'll use our waiting list that we have with Focus, pull up the waiting list. All right, who wanted to come in on a Tuesday afternoon? And because of texting, we can very quickly fire off text to the people on that list to see if anyone wants to come in. So that void, if we want to fill it, we can fill it very quickly.
Yeah, and I would imagine that having a platform that's fully integrated with Focus makes a huge difference.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. You know, to begin with, there's no data entry. There was just less work for my office to do. We were already overwhelmed, and just having that integration and just setting off quickly, right out of the gate, being able to do all of this was fantastic.
Yeah, I can see that. You know, as we were kind of getting ready for this, I did a little bit of looking around your Facebook and other social media challenges. And I saw that you did a lot with before and after stories. And I was really impressed with what you had. Who does your marketing?
So mostly all of our marketing is through social media. I used to outsource it to, I tried a few different companies over the years. And then about 2 years ago, we decided that we were just going to do everything in-house. So my entire team takes ownership of our social media presence. What we noticed was that people like pictures of other people. That's what everyone's interested in. And I think what makes orthodontics so fun is that we see interesting people and hear interesting stories all day long. So it's very easy for an orthodontic office to create content. So if someone shares a fun story and they're okay with us posting it on social media, mom and dad are okay with it, then it's, snap a picture and get the story out there. And it is a lot of fun. I can say that if an office takes over social media on their own, you have to take a little more effort to have consistent posting. At first, things would sort of fall through the cracks and we would not post. So what we did, instead of having one person responsible for social media, the entire team is responsible for it. So each week, we're all together. It's our job together to take that social media page across the goal line and post some really fun things that we think everyone would enjoy. And we've noticed that because of that, our social media page just has like a little bit more authenticity. It has a personal touch, and for us, we enjoy that.
I absolutely love this ad that I saw on your Facebook too. This one is so cute. So on theme with with Halloween. So your website also is a great tool, and I see now that you're offering virtual consults. So why don't you tell us how you started that process and how things are going?
Easy enough to put the widget on the website saying, hey, you can call or text us for an appointment. And if you want, you can even send a few photos. So, we'll do a quick exam to see if it's worth your time coming in. And that's, I think, a win-win, right? For the person who's not sure if it's even worth coming in for an office visit, and for us to clear up space. Sometimes people just, aren't, for whatever reason, they would not be a good orthodontic candidate. So it just makes it easy to have this communication, easy for us to, for people who are looking for orthodontic care to find us. And then once they send those photos over, mostly almost always now at this point through texting, we can reach out and say, hey, yeah, if you'd like to come in, we'll do a quick exam and see what your options are. So it has made it very easy for everyone.
Nice. It sounds like you've implemented a lot of new stuff this year, and you seem to be looking forward towards the future. What do you think's coming next year? Where are you planning on going?
So we'll definitely continue. I don't see the virtual waiting room going anywhere. I think we'll continue that. Even in a non-COVID world, the feedback I get from a lot of parents is, hey, this is great. I can drop off my son or daughter. If I have a half of an hour or an hour, I can run other errands. And I know that they're safe, and I can come back when they're finished and they're happy, we're happy. It frees up time for everyone, and time is valuable. So the virtual waiting room, I think I will keep. I had talked about how our workflow kind of changed now that we have been using Rhinogram. So there are virtual visits that we do, and we will continue to do. So some appointments that we had pre-COVID throughout the years, we noticed that they were just sort of a time sink, both for us and for the patient. So we're trying to figure out what those appointments are and turning them into virtual visits. So number one, a lot of our Invisalign cases. If what we'll try to do is put a virtual visit for an aligner patient between two real visits. If they don't have any interproximal reduction or anything complicated going on, we'll send out a text and say, hey, just send some photos of your teeth and your bite with and without your aligners in. And if everything looks good, we'll mail off your aligners. It'll save you a month or two before you have to come back into the office. Patients love that. We do the same thing with recalls and observations. So a lot of times if kids aren't quite ready for full fixed appliances, we're maybe waiting for a few baby teeth, we'll send out a text and say, we were waiting for two primary molars to exfoliate, come out before we get started. Why don't you just take a couple of pictures and Dr. Reed can check to see if those teeth are still there. Parent does it, text a reply back to say, hey, you know what, those molars are still there. We're gonna reach out in the spring, we'll do the same thing and see if we're ready then. Again, it saves the parents time from coming into the office and it saves chair time for us. We're also using it for retainer checks, much like Invisalign. We'll ask patients to take a picture of their teeth and their bite with and without their retainers. If everything looks great, then we'll say, hey, keep up the good work. We'll circle back in 6 months just to make sure everything's okay. And then there was, emergency visits. That's been really nice for everyone in the office. So a lot of times someone would call, the front office would take the call and weren't quite sure if what the patient was calling about was a true emergency or not. So maybe there was a little snag in the retainer and they didn't know if they needed a new retainer, or they were certain that something was off with their brace, but not sure if it was a brace or an elastic. Well, now it's a quick photo or two. The office manager can often field it herself, or she can send it to an assistant or me, and we can sort of triage that and take care of it. And 9 times out of 10, the patient really doesn't have to come in because it's not a true emergency. So there are all these things that we can use the platform for so that we can free up our chairs and also free up time for our patients and their parents.
Nice. So we had another question here that I wanted to ask you. planning for potential future closures caused by COVID-19. So what if, do you feel like you're prepared if this winter, if next year we had another kind of shutdown? Do you think that now you have all these tools to be ready?
Absolutely. I feel more prepared now than I did in March, partially because we've already been through it. But now that I have a really easy way to communicate with my patients or future patients, I feel much more at ease. I also know that we can, I think Rhinogram is going to be adding a little bit of video. So that'll be an even easier way for the patients, my existing patients, to maybe get through their care, continue their care, if we were to shut down and even beyond that. So I think we're much more prepared. I think most dental offices are as prepared as they can be, but at the end of the day, all we can do is take it day by day.
And let's talk about the future. So what kind of goals do you see for next year that you and your team want to achieve?
Yeah, so definitely keep that virtual waiting room, add on to our virtual visits. Like I said before, if we can add a little video with Rhinogram, that's going to be fantastic. That'll be a game changer for us. The other thing, I know Rhinogram is looking for Rhino Pay. So currently we have all of our contracts are tied into Focus, and there are automatic payments through Focus Ortho. But sometimes there's that extra payment, whether someone needs an additional retainer, or maybe their credit card number has changed, or they got a new card. So there are payments that people need to make on the fly. So being able to use Rhino Pay will really help the front desk be able to collect those payments easier. And that's just going to make it easier for our patients and their parents to be able to pay those occasional fees as well. So definitely want to use Rhino Pay in the video in the future. I think that'll help a lot.
Nice. Well, thank you, Charlie, and thank you, Dr. Reed, for this presentation. It looks like we have some questions here in the control panel. And just for any folks that may have joined us late, we will send out a recording of this presentation. So be sure to check your email for that. So if you missed the first 7 minutes, don't worry, we got you with the recording. So we have a question here that says, you mentioned that Rhinogram has bidirectional texting. Can patients send in photos, or do they send those via email?
Oh no, the patients send, what I like about Rhinogram is they call them selfies. Everybody knows what a selfie is. So there's actually an attachment that you can send to the patient that shows them exactly the pictures that you're looking for as far as the bite is concerned. And so you just say, hey, look, snap a few selfies of your teeth, send them to this number, and we can take a look at your teeth and your bite. It's very easy. And the other thing is, you don't have to download, the patient doesn't have to download anything like an additional app. So it's just very simple.
Nice. It looks like we have a question from a current Rhinogram customer, and they are interested in using the Rhino video in their office. So what you can do is you can reach out to your Rhinogram customer success representative, and they can talk to you about what that schedule looks like about getting video in your office. So they can help you answer that question for you. Dr. Reed, we have a question here for you. Do my patients need to download an app to use Rhinogram?
No, and that's the beauty of it. It's so simple for everyone, and patients and parents love it. Everyone can text. It seems to be what everyone prefers these days as far as communication. So super easy.
All right, Dr. Reed, another question for you. This person says, I may have missed it if you talked about it earlier. I'm sorry, no worries there. Have you closed any chairs in your office due to COVID-19?
We did, yeah. So we've sort of closed every other chair so that we can keep, we're at 9 feet apart. And like I said, I also brought in some equipment, air purifiers. I bought small mobile dental evacuation units. We're really trying not to do procedures that generate an aerosol, but if you need to deband there and use a slow speed for an emergency, we want to be able to collect that as best as possible. So yeah, we're doing what we can, but right now we have closed down chairs, and we pretty much closed down our waiting room. Sometimes a parent does want to come in, and so they're happy to bring the patient in and then they'll wait in the waiting room, but pretty much it's just a couple of chairs at this point.
Charlie, I think this might be a good question for you. Does Focus Ortho and Rhinogram sync up to make my workflows easier?
Yeah, and so I think that this is kind of the thing we hear the most about is how do the two programs integrate? And basically on the back end, there's something called an API that communicates between the two programs. So whenever you add a patient into Focus, the information immediately shows in Rhinogram. And it's pretty seamless and straightforward. You're working inside Focus and working inside Rhinogram, and they communicate between the two programs. And I would imagine, or I wouldn't imagine, it's pretty seamless. I guess Dr. Reed could say more about that than I can, but it's just, I like to say it works auto magically.
Yeah, that's I like that.
I describe it.
It is quite, it's like magic. It's seamless.
Nice. Okay, guys, it looks like we have a couple questions on pricing, and I would love to answer those, but I would first, as always, would love to share. We do have a special for this, anyone that watches this webinar. So reach out to your Rhinogram sales rep, and they will tell you all about the special pricing that we have for watching this wonderful Focus Ortho webinar. And I think that's all of the time. We wanted to keep this short and sweet today, so it looks like we're out of time. But if we had any questions that we didn't get to, again, we will reach out via email or phone call. We will email out a recording of this webinar. In the meantime, if you have any questions, feel free to email us at hello@Rhinogram, or you can shoot us a text at 423-800-7644. Thank you again, Dr. Reed and Charlie. I hope everyone has a wonderful day.
Thank you. Thank you, Erica.
Thank you.
Thanks, Charlie.
Good to see you all.